Ben and Avery just got married. Ben was friends with Avery's brother, and as part of the same friend group, Ben and Avery got to know each other in a casual setting. As time went on, they started chatting with each other more and more as friends until that memorable day when they had their first date in a library. I'm Tim Smith, and this is the Real Dating Wisdom Podcast, where I interview married Christian couples about their time before marriage in order to give you real wisdom from real stories of Christian dating done right. Now, unlike other episodes, Ben and Avery were not married at the time of this recording, so you'll get to hear their experience with dating in real time. So, without further ado, here's the story of Ben and Avery.
My name is Ben Trelk. I am 22 years old. I'm currently a student at NKU for computer information technology, and I work as a SOC analyst at Alta Fiber.
My name is Avery Fetzer. I'm 25, and I work as an exhibit artist for Answers in Genesis.
Now, you guys both mentioned different last names when you introduce yourselves. This is a podcast where I interview married couples. What's going on there? What? Are you guys not married?
Yeah, great question. We're engaged, and we are getting married in a month. So
No, we're getting married in like 2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks.
19 days.
Oh, she's counting the days.
Yeah.
Okay.
It comes up fast. It went very fast.
Yeah. And then right now, where are we? Where are we recording this?
Yeah, we are in the Burlington Boone County Library, and this is where we had our first date.
A year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago.
Actually, a little over a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Wow. The first question I have for you guys is, how were you guys raised to view dating in your households?
Yeah, good question. I think we've talked about this before, and it's relatively pretty similar between both of us. My parents always brought us up in the sense that they wanted us to understand the meaning of dating and why you would date before we started dating. So it was kind of an unsaid rule that you had to be around 18 to start dating. I remember having times when I was before that and I wanted to start dating, but since they brought us up in that way, I always understood what the purpose of dating was, and that was for marriage. And I think we all pretty much understood that when you're still living with your parents and you're under the age of 18, you're not an adult yet, you're not really in a place to be married. And so it was just kind of that unsaid rule of none of us really felt the need to until we were at that age.
Yeah, we were super similar in my household. My parents actually had more of a strict rule that you couldn't date until you're 18. So it was always kind of understood that, yeah, when you dated, it was for marriage. And, like, it was even, like a sometimes debatable whether or not you could go to, like, prom with a guy or something. It was kind of like, yeah, but, like, as friends. Like, it's nothing more because, like, you're still a kid. You're still growing up. You'll get to that later. So
no courtship? You guys weren't raised with courtship stuff?
No, I don't think my parents like had that experience from their dating. So actually, it wasn't even something I really knew about until I was older.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say the same. It was something that I've heard other people in our homeschool family friend group do. It wasn't something I really understood fully, and my parents also didn't grow up in that area of dating. They dated. And so, yeah, it wasn't something that we really knew or that I really grew up in. So I think that probably affected how I viewed dating or courtship.
So before you guys met each other, what was your experience with dating like?
You want to start us off?
Sure. Okay. So Ben is the second person that I've dated. So prior to Ben, I had dated someone shortly after graduating college, and I didn't actually, even though I was raised with the mindset of like dating is for marriage, I wasn't really in, I would say like a maturity in my faith at that point to really desire that dating be motivated with like marriage, like from the beginning. So I dated someone just because I liked them, which I learned kind of through that and after that, like the Lord really changed my perspective on dating and like the importance of it. So yeah, my first relationship did not have that in mind. I think there was a lot of things where, you know, I think if you don't have that in mind, you can kind of get really far into a relationship and realize, hey, we're not actually aligned on these things, because I wasn't evaluating you beforehand with the mindset of like, oh, we could, you know, have a family together, you know, serve the Lord together. Instead, it was just, oh, I like you, you're fun. And then you kind of put aside those deciding factors of like theology and church and family, because that's your end goal isn't marriage. Mm-hmm. So that was something really different once I exited that relationship. And then before I started dating Ben, like that was a mindset that I had already started developing of like, oh, I really want to do this the next time I date.
Mm. Yeah, I would say this is actually a pretty crucial part to our relationship, is our past relationships, because we both had, I would say, maybe a somewhat similar situation before we had started dating each other. I would think mine was a year or two before we started dating. I had got out of a relationship that was 6 months long, and it was kind of similar. It was something that I was pursuing the Lord in my life at that point, and she was also. But I think that there were a lot of differences between what we wanted and what we were seeking. And so getting out of that relationship really put into perspective what I was looking for and how to serve the Lord in a relationship. And so we had so many countless conversations about what our past relationship was like and how we see ourselves moving forward based off of our own experiences. Yeah, so for me, it was also just one relationship. It was just 6 months long.
Yeah, because it's really hard when you start a relationship that's not rooted in our goal is to, one, serve the Lord together, but end in marriage in a way that glorifies God. Because I think like kind of what happened for both of us is like as the Lord worked in our hearts and our separate different relationships we were in, like we were each motivated, but the person that we were with wasn't having the same convictions. So you kind of like realize the unequal yoked that you're both going towards different things.
So was it those relationships and how they ended? Was that what got you guys to question how you were previously treating relationships, or was it something else?
So for me, it was definitely like while I was in that relationship, the Lord was working on my heart. So I dated the person I was with before Ben for almost 2 years. And it was about a year in that the Lord started like reviving my heart and drawing me closer to him and creating that desire for me to like be pursuing more like future godly things with the person that I was with. And like there was a period where we tried to work on that, but it ended up being like I was motivated and I was doing these things and the person just wasn't in that place and didn't desire it, and that just wasn't going to happen. So yeah, it was definitely like something that I was shown by the Lord during it, and then kind of like making the decision of like, okay, this is never going to honor the Lord, so I'm going to have to leave it. That was like me, I think, fully like committing to like, nope, I'm going after the Lord.
Yeah, for me it was that since we were both kind of pursuing the Lord at that point, I would say kind of, but we were pursuing the Lord. She was someone that I didn't see myself marrying in terms of just other aspects of our lives, and what we, like I said, like what we desired. And so that kind of played an effect. And I think one of the things that relationship put into perspective for me was the question of, if you don't see yourself marrying somebody before you start dating them, should you get into that relationship? That was a question that I was, I guess, just really asking myself, because before we started dating, we had a little bit of a friendship. We had known each other for a year or so. I didn't envision myself marrying her before we got in that relationship. And so that was something that put into perspective of what I was going to date for next. And getting in a relationship with Avery was, we had first kind of grown a friendship, and then I had kind of always known that I would marry her as well. And that just made a really big difference in my relationship, our relationship together, was knowing previously that I was going to marry her.
So let's get into that. How did you guys meet? Mm-hmm. And then how did that progress to becoming a relationship?
Yeah. Well, so when our family moved here about 6 years ago, his family was one of the first families that like my parents and my younger brothers like got to know. So I was actually in college when they moved. So I didn't really know the Trelks that well, but my brother became really good friends with him and his brother. So I like knew of their family, and our families actually had Thanksgiving together like 5 years ago. I like came home from college, had Thanksgiving. Apparently Ben was there, and I have like no recollection of him. Like I know his family was there, but I don't like ever remember talking to you or noticing you, which is just so funny to me because it's like I know we were there together, but I don't remember.
Yeah, it was such an interesting time because now my mom just recently sent me a picture of us two standing together at my graduation party. She doesn't remember being at my graduation party.
No.
I don't remember her being at my graduation party.
It's like a week fresh of me getting out of college and like being home, and I probably was like, oh sure, I'll go to this like random person's graduation party and I'll take a picture with them for some reason.
Yeah. So there was just no previous connection to us other than just our families. We've been close with them since they moved here. And I've been close with her younger brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so after graduation for Matt and her younger brother, which is Matt's my brother, she was just out of a relationship, I think, around then.
Yeah, I had just broke up with my boyfriend, like, I think a couple months before this, but I didn't have a whole lot of friends at the time coming out of that relationship just because of the dynamic of of how it was. And so I started hanging out with my brother more, and then as a result, I started hanging out with Shane and Matt. So there was like one weekend where I like did something with them like Friday night, and then they were together Saturday, so I was just with them all day Saturday, and then I think it like went into Sunday as well. So it was just like a whole weekend. Like I think we like longboarded and played disc golf, and I don't remember what else. Foursquare, or no, not Foursquare. What's that game? The one where you hit it.
Yeah, Foursquare.
No, not Foursquare. The one with the ball in the net.
Oh, spike ball.
Yeah, spike ball.
Yeah, so her mindset slowly went from, oh, my brother's friends to, oh, my brother's friend.
Okay, that's not exactly what happened. Kind of, but not really. All right,
that's what you said.
I remember there was like an initial attraction, but I thought that the age difference was a big deal. And I was kind of like, I was fresh out of kind of a long relationship, and so I wasn't necessarily like looking to date. I was more just like, oh, it's just like a little crush. That's sweet. And then we kept seeing each other over the summer because we played D&D together with our brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Played some D&D. That contrast actually was really interesting because for me it was also fairly similar. I thought, she's 3 years older than me. We're in different stages of life at this point.
Yeah.
There's probably not much of a reason to pursue this.
Although people early on saw things. Like tell them what Gabe said when we were longboarding. So
one night we were longboarding. My sister and her now husband were in town. We were in their neighborhood, and my sister and I went up to Avery and were like, you want to longboard with us? And I
was like, sure, why not? I have no friends.
Avery was kind of learning, so I was just...
I guess no idea.
With
no
you,
idea what I was
sticking
doing.
around.
You were the only one that stayed behind to teach me. Everybody went off down the road, and I was like, I don't even know how to stand on this. And Ben was the one person who hung back and made sure I was like keeping up.
Yeah, there was definitely nothing else motivating that other than just wanting to help you.
So okay. Okay, got it.
No, and so since that was kind of happening that whole time, I was just helping her, and we were longboarding together. Gabe, I guess later that night, had told my brother and my sister, they were like, give it a couple of months and Ben and Avery will be dating. So he told them that, and he kind of called it.
Yeah. And like after that long weekend I kind of spent with them, that was pretty much like the first time I had really, it was very early in us hanging out.
So
Yeah.
you've got two brothers?
I have one brother.
One brother,
and
okay.
a brother-in-law.
Okay. And they were both hanging out with you guys?
Yep.
And how old are they?
Yeah, my younger brother is now 20.
Okay, so he's younger.
Turning 21 in October. And Gabe is 22 as well. So
Okay.
we're the same age.
Okay. So why him and not the other two available males there?
Well,
One was, I guess, way younger.
okay, yeah, Matt was 5 years younger than me. And Gabe was dating his sister at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why not.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I became the available option.
Yeah. Well, and you were very sweet to me then, and that was, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also thought you were cute, so there was that
man.
too.
So I would say that was really the beginning of our relationship. There wasn't really a defined line for me of when we met each other. But that was kind of the start of a friendship for those moments. Yeah.
And then you guys just were hanging out for what? How long?
Yeah, like
There were a couple of months. I know there was...
there was like 2 or 3 months where we didn't even see each other
I
or
think
talk.
it was a little bit more than that. I think it was
Maybe.
probably like 6 or so.
Yeah. Well, what happened was our D&D group kind of ended like midsummer, and then my brother went off to school, so he was kind of like the middleman for when I would hang out with him and his brother. And so with him gone, I just didn't even talk to them.
Yeah.
But Shane came back, my brother Shane came back for fall break, and they had a bonfire, and I went and then talked to Ben for like the first time in like 2-3 months.
Yeah, you're right. So it would have been like just 2 or 3 months.
And then we started texting from there, and then we just continued texting like every single day for like maybe 2 or 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I would say pretty early on it wasn't every day, but like maybe a month in it was like every day for like 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A fun little fact here, actually, is that I was currently had my eye on someone else.
Ooh. Uh-oh.
I won't name drop this time. And
I'll tell you after.
yeah, we'll tell you after. And so that was an interesting thing because I just initially was like talking with Avery just as friends.
I was not.
Yeah, you were not.
Not just as friends.
But then so our first kind of conversation was we shared podcasts back at each other because I liked audio dramas and had some to share. So we just started talking about that. And then for the other thing, I very quickly caught on that there was no mutual interaction there.
Okay.
With the other person.
Yeah, I think the Lord was really showing me.
It's like no chemistry or...
I don't think they were interested, and so there was just a lot more. But thank the Lord, it's just that God was showing me that another door. So that's my fun little fact.
Yeah. So you guys were just sharing podcasts back and forth.
Yeah, it was funny. So like I actually was the one who initiated texting Ben after that bonfire because I had his number from like a group chat.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the risk and I'm gonna ask him for a recommendation. And I remember the first podcast he sent me was like this creepy murder like expose that was like 10 episodes long, and I was like, gosh dang it, I'm gonna have to listen to this whole thing so that I can keep talking to him about it. And I remember it was like okay, but I probably wouldn't have listened to the whole thing had you not sent it to me.
Yeah, I feel bad about that.
It's okay. I don't know why that was the first podcast you sent me.
It was one of those things where it was a while
like a
since I
serial
listened
killer.
to it. Well, it was about the Golden State Killer.
Yeah.
So it was a famous criminal story, and it was one of those things where it was a while since I last listened to it.
So you just
and
did
those,
not remember.
Those graphic scenes just kind of
I
leave
was
your
like,
mind.
oh my
Like, oh, this will be good. We're talking about crime podcasts.
Well, that actually brings up a good question. Did you guys have a lot in common? Did you have a lot of the same interests and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think
question.
I think we both we bonded over stories and over books. So that's why our first official date was the library, because we kind of, I think in our conversations we talk a lot about books and movies and just stories in general. And I remember it was like, because we had been texting a lot, and it was like shortly after Christmas, maybe like the day after Christmas. And I remember Ben like called me out of the blue, which was weird because we weren't talking on the phone. We were only texting. And he was like, do you want to go to the library with me? And I was like, yeah. Of course.
Yeah. I did not say that it was a date.
Yeah, you didn't.
So, but I guess later on,
But
after
you knew
we
it was a
started
date.
dating,
Well, I found out later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know because we were like we were just getting to know each other, but it was never like, I want to get to know you because I want to date you. It was like, oh, like we're becoming good friends.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's because you're interested in me or if we're
Yeah.
just good friends.
that might lead to some philosophy that might be different from the other people you've had in this podcast.
Yeah. Did you prefer that where it was not so like, I want to date you right away?
You know what? I actually got to a point where I had to like wrestle something in my heart where I was like, you know what? I'm just waiting on him to make the move of like initiating this. And if he hasn't at this point, then maybe he does just want to be friends. And I remember like praying to the Lord, like, Lord, let me be content with friendship then, because I like cherished and connected so much with Ben that like I was like, well, you know what, this could just be like a really good friendship, and like let that just be enough for me, because yeah, I really wanted it to be more, but I was like, gosh dang it, I don't know if he feels the same way, because again, like I was in my mind about being older, so that was like, oh, I don't know if Ben really is viewing me romantically, because I could just be Shane's older sister, you know.
Yeah. At that point, for me, it was that I was absolutely motivated to one day date her. But I think my philosophy of dating at this stage was that I wanted to really get to know her, rather than I'm not a super forward person in that sense. And so my goal was really just to create a friendship. I think that was probably something that I had failed in the past, is really creating a friendship with somebody, and then
Yeah, and I appreciated that we had that first.
Yeah,
like
that you
months
didn't
of
have that
friendship.
Yeah. And so that was really the goal, is I didn't really want to bring in feelings until it was necessary, until the Lord until the Lord told me that it was necessary.
Yeah.
And there was just a moment, there was one night where I think it was probably after 4 different dates or times that we've
hang out
separately. On our
hanging
own.
out, dates, but not calling it a date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I finally was honest about my feelings and my intentions.
Yeah.
And so that might be different than what some of the other experiences.
So
we've
one
talked
thing that
about.
comes to mind is a lot of guys are afraid of being friend zoned, which I guess that was almost your fear here.
Yeah, it was. Well, because like when we would hang out, it would be like, you want to go to the library? You want to go on a like walk at the park? It wasn't like, do you want to go to dinner with me?
Yeah.
Like,
Wasn't the obvious.
no, yeah. So I was like, I mean, I do this with my friends, so yeah okay.
And you just went with it. You almost took the risk at that point.
Yeah,
that
I
you would
did.
be
And that's why I was like
friend-zoned.
praying to the Lord, like, give me strength that this is only friendship, because otherwise it's gonna break my heart.
Yeah, that wasn't the intent though. So
I know,
okay.
I know. And like
worked
you
out.
said, you said something like a few weeks into that. I'd say like 3 weeks maybe after we went on our first date. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't super long. It probably was just three weeks of
Yeah.
just that kind of friendship ground.
And I remember you said to me, you were like, I just like want to tell you, like, I'm interested in you, but like it's okay if you just want to be friends. And I was like, no, I'm interested too. I don't want to just be friends.
That's always a little let me down easy insert.
Yeah,
that
like it's okay.
you
Don't
have
worry
to have
about it
when
if
you
like
have
you
that
don't feel the same way.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the first date, it was just you guys hanging out, real casual.
Yeah, we actually picked out a book to read together. And then like the next time, like, so we got like each a copy of that book. And then the next time we hung out on that walk, we talked about the book.
Okay.
So it was like motivated with like an activity. So like that was why it wasn't very clear. It's like, are we just in a book club or?
Interesting. So you guys both got the same book. You're reading it here, and you talked about it.
Yeah.
That's an interesting date idea.
Yeah.
It was fun. We actually did it a couple more times after we really started dating, like officially.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if there's any advice, that was kind of a really good way to get to know each other, because the book It was The Body by Stephen King.
Which is his only non-horror
Yeah.
book, I will say.
Yeah, so it's not horror. It's
Yeah.
actually a really sweet story of a friend group.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's sweet. They're kind of, their intention is to go see a body for the first time.
Oh, okay.
So it's the exposure of their own innocence is kind of what the story's about. And so the conversations that led after that were really intentional to understanding how we envision and how we view a lot of just our own life and our own innocence. And it really brought in a lot of different conversations. And so it was really nice to have that start into a relationship of just hard conversation.
Yeah, because I think it's really telling how someone reacts to a story or elements in a story. Like, does this bother you that, like, the story had this in it? How do you think about it? Do you think that's appropriate or not? I feel like someone's reaction to something can be very telling of, like, what they actually think about something.
As opposed to just what they...
Yeah, just, like, if you just say it, then okay. But if I hear a thoughtful response about a element in this book, then it's like, oh, okay, like, I can see how you think about this. And realizing that we were, like, very much on the same page with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very early on.
So we're getting kind of off track here, but I want to ask this question since it just came to mind.
Yeah.
What are some good cheap date ideas? So library seems to be one. What are some other cheap dates that you guys
Go
have
for a walk.
at the park?
Yeah.
walks are always
Walk in
great.
the woods, walk in the park.
Hiking.
Longboarding, riding your bike.
You got to know how to longboard, or have the other person show you how to do it.
Just find somebody to teach you how to longboard. It's easy.
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. I don't know.
A lot of picnics.
Yeah.
Picnics, even in the car.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, like
fun.
we love to go to the airport lookout. There's like a parking lot, and you can watch like planes take off. And
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that.
yeah, we'll just pop the trunk, have a blanket, and like we'll either like if it's nice, we'll have books or dinner or something. Honestly, I think almost all of our dates are cheap dates. Like rarely will we like I think spend money to like go somewhere or do something. It's mostly like be outside or whatever.
Yeah.
And as it is right now, are you guys going on a lot of like dates, or is a lot of just like hanging out? Like, how's that dynamic?
I would say after engagement, we became pretty tunnel focused.
Yeah.
And so sadly enough, those dates, we'd still do them. We did one the other night, but it's been a lot more, wedding focused.
Yeah, like the time in between has grown. I think too, like as we've been dating for longer, like when we first started dating, we did a ton of one-on-one activities because we're just getting to know each other. But like I feel like maybe 6 months in, it became a lot more like family. So like if I go over to his house, like we're hanging out like with almost all of his family. And then same like if he goes to like my parents' house with me, then like we're hanging out with like my brothers and my parents. And like I feel like that kind of became more of the norm rather than we're trying to like always hang out one-on-one intentionally every time we're with each other.
That's interesting because like the courtship model is it's like family all of the time, and then maybe one-on-one as you're engaged.
Yeah, and we kind of did the opposite. I feel like
this way is more natural though.
Yeah, it was very natural.
Like once you introduce somebody to your family, then it's kind of like you're in. Like,
right.
You don't want to introduce somebody like, oh, we've been talking for 2 weeks or a month or whatever.
Yeah,
like
that was something we actually both expressed before we started dating. Was that we both love our families and we wanted them to be very involved in the relationship and know each other.
Yeah, and like even before we started dating, because like so Ben expressed his intentions of wanting to date me, but like we both like took maybe like a week and a half time to pray about it. And like I spoke to like my family, Ben spoke to his family, Ben eventually spoke to my dad to ask his permission. So we really wanted our families involved. Like we wanted their counsel. And like even though I said like we did a lot of one-on-one stuff early on, we were still like with our families doing stuff one-on-one also. Yeah. So it was definitely like I think because like even before we started dating, I feel like we both kind of had this hunch of like, okay, you're the one. So it was like, all right, then like I want to make sure like our families are on board.
Yeah.
So what was it? 3 weeks after the library, you guys are now official. How did the dynamic of you guys' relationship change now that it was official? Like, did it change much?
I would say there was so much excitement in those first couple weeks, and that really changed. Like, just the feeling of the relationship being from friendships to, okay, we're dating now, there was a lot of contrast there, but it was heightened. So it was just like, there was just heightened emotions. Everything was just felt right.
Yeah, and I think because we both kind of had this, like, almost like I feel like we both, like, knew that we were going to marry each other. And so it was like, oh my gosh, this is like the beginning of like the rest of our lives. Like, I don't think either of us doubted that it was like ever going to end. So I think that was where a lot of that excitement was like, oh my word, like this is starting and it's never gonna stop.
Yeah. Even though it did take us probably 6 months till we had that conversation of
marriage.
Yeah, marriage, and if we were people that we wanted to see each other.
Yeah.
Or if we wanted to marry each other.
Yeah.
Which I think was also really good because it allowed us to have a dating relationship that I also wanted to eventually turn into something that was marriage focused. But I think it was just so went without saying that our priorities eventually shifted. I'd say probably 6 months. You think that's when we had our conversation?
Yeah, I feel like no, I think it was less. I think it was like 4 months in.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think like even though we both had that idea in our mind and like that was a motivation, like if you date, we're motivated towards marriage. I think it was like those first months of dating was still like figuring out like, what do you think about this? What do you believe about this? Like there was tons of conversations that we had. Because I feel like, because I remember it was in May. That's why I think it was 4 months, because we started dating in January. That was when I think, the shift of like, okay, we do want to get married, which we kind of already knew. But like, then it was like almost like a more practical route of like, okay, now we need to make sure we talk about these things and kind of like almost like get these things in order. What's the timeline? We think that this could happen. Kind of being more like, actually like, all right, let's make it happen then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that feels like more of a natural progression anyway, because it's not like, all right, now that we're official, that 3 weeks after the first date or whatever, let's start talking about marriage. Now it's, it gradually builds up.
Yep, totally.
Were a lot of your conversations, were they like deep intellectual conversations, or did you guys just have a lot of fun together?
I remember it being a really good mix of both. We've always been very intentional with our conversations. Yeah. And just our time. And so I think it just comes along pretty naturally.
I think we have fun having intense conversations. Like, I love just kind of like digging in deep and us kind of like fully just like all of your thoughts about this thing. Like, I love just hashing it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd say it was fun.
But it's nice to also spread it out because it wasn't like anything got intense. Because God was very gracious in the sense that we have agreed on a lot. And the things that we have contrast in, which is pretty minimal, and they're pretty minor things. But the way that we were just able to converse about them, there was always middle ground. And that was just a blessing from the Lord.
Yeah.
Be careful I'm not treading on thin ice with these questions. But the next one is, where do you both stand theologically? Are you both like on the same page about every doctrinal point, or did you grow have you grown together, or how did that all work out?
I don't know. I feel like there's probably some doctrinal points we maybe haven't hit. I don't know. I feel like as we like started dating and having more conversations, we realized, I think part of it is because we were raised very similarly, that we were on the same page. But I remember there was one time where you asked me, you were like, are you a Calvinist? And I was like, I don't know what that is. And I remember you like walked me through it, and I was like, okay. And I remember like studying it on my own and being like, okay, yeah, we're on the same page. So it's like, I don't know, like there's probably specific things, but like, I feel like every time, like if there's ever been a misunderstanding or I don't know, I hesitate to say disagreement because like Ben said before, we've been blessed where we haven't really had a whole lot of disagreements, and where we have, they've been pretty minor, or it's been miscommunication and something where we've been able to kind of like look back on like our foundations of what we understand and what we think, and realize, okay, no, we are believing the same thing. And like, yeah. What would you say?
Yeah, no, that was well said. I would say that for me, I had like a very set, I think there are just important topics that you need to agree on. Faith, Christ's first return, or Christ's first coming, and also just sanctification, justification, how you're saved, and then also how we plan to live out our lives in Christ. And those were just, I think, the main topics that I wanted to align on. And very quickly, it was pretty obvious that we did align on those things. Yeah, I think there was just some main topics that we wanted to be sure about. And then after that, there is so much. And I think we're also learning. I'm 22. I'm still understanding and reading the Bible. And there's a lot of things that I'm still understanding as an individual. But it's been fun to also really study those things together and broaden our understanding of theology and doctrine, and challenge each other on things.
Yeah.
I know one thing we recently challenged each other on was paedobaptism, and
because that'll come up like with marriage, right?
Yeah, that comes up, and so it was something that my family, I think our families disagree on, and so we were coming from different backgrounds on that.
Yeah.
But we both kind of came to the same or similar conclusions.
Yeah, and the way
in our
we
own pursuit
approached that was we really just went to, what does the text say? Like, instead of like your opinion, my opinion, what does the text say? And let's study it and be like as objective as we can to like what is Scripture saying. And that is kind of where we were able to find an agreement of like, all right, I think this is what I found in the text, and like we looked at it together, and yeah.
That's cool. So you weren't like super strict that each other has to have the perfect doctrine before you could even consider each other. It was just the main things.
Well, honestly, like I wouldn't even say that I have the perfect doctrine now, because I've found in my life, as I've studied God's word, I'm constantly like growing in my understanding of his character and the Bible, and just like what it means like for my whole life. And so I feel like to me, what was important to see in Ben is he submitted to God, and is he submitted to like, or committed to pursuing truth in the Lord rather than like a certain set of doctrine? Like, is he committed to like looking at it always through the lens of like looking at the text first and like, you know, thinking of it that way? And I think because I've seen that, and like the way that like you live and the way that you are a Christian, it's like, all right, you know, like even if we come up with something where we don't agree, it's like I both know that we are striving not to be right, but rather to submit to the Lord, and so we'll work through it.
Yeah, that's the crucial point right there, is where we're submitted to, and it's Christ first, and he's who we submit to and who we're committed to, and through that, you know, Lord walks us through our own individual growth, and then unites us in our unity, and our partneral growth. So
So the next question I have on here is, how did you both discover the other one was the one you wanted to marry? And you guys kind of said that you knew this fairly early on.
Yeah, I actually like made a note before we like even started dating. And I was like, I love Ben. I'm gonna marry Ben.
Really?
Maybe not that intensely, but like
I felt that intense when you read it to me.
No, it felt intense when I wrote it. I was like, I know this is for sure, but I'm gonna keep it to myself. And then I told you later, after we'd been dating for a while.
Yeah, we went through all her notes.
Yeah, some thoughts along the way where I was like, see, I can prove it. I knew back then.
So most married couples would say you guys are, you know, fresh. Like I think our Pastor Michael says, until you've been married for at least 10 years,
oh my word,
you're newlyweds.
Yeah.
So nine years, you're still newlywed.
Yeah.
So you guys are not even married yet, but going off of this question is, how did you discover the other ones you wanted to marry? How have you guys grown over this time? How have you grown closer, not just theologically, but just knowing each other better? And
I would say we've grown from, and again, we're not married yet, so there's a lot more time that's going to continue to unite us, and our love for each other will also grow.
No, this is it, Ben. This is it.
That's why we're on this podcast. Yeah. But I would say that, for one, we've grown in friendship.
Totally.
And I think that's something that is just always going to grow. It's exponential. And so, but I would say that our growth went from not knowing each other at all to feeling we've known each other for forever. And yeah, there was just, I don't know how to necessarily describe it.
I feel like it's in little ways. Like there was a situation recently where I found some like ants that were building up in my garage. Ooh. And I remember I got like really stressed out with it. And like Ben's reaction to my stress was like it was very supportive and it was very gentle, but it was like he was able to recognize kind of like where I was at and like respond appropriately and help me through that. And I think it's just like, I don't know if you would have responded. I mean, maybe you would have responded the same way early on, but like to see that like there was almost like a niche understanding of like exactly kind of what I needed to get me out of that spiral of ants are eating my house. Yeah. To kind of like, okay, now let's take it down and let's talk about it and let's be rational and have a conversation and not just freak out. So I feel like it's like little ways like that where it's like, oh, you know me well.
Yeah, I would say that it's just reacting to situations, but now knowing how Avery's thinking and how knowing how she reacts to things. And so it's been a lot of just, instead of growing myself as an individual in the relationship, it's also growing with Avery. And so it's understanding how she thinks, understanding how her emotions work, and adjusting responses towards that.
Me understanding how certain things I'll do and say will affect you. That's been like a growing thing of, yeah.
So tell me some qualities that you guys really like in each other.
Ooh, I'll start. Okay.
Go for it. I'll listen.
Well, that's it. Listening. So super early on, that was one of the things that I think attracted me to Ben the most, was what a good listener Ben is. Like he will just let me talk and share, and he listens, and then he asks good questions.
Oh yeah.
So he's not just hearing me talk, but he's actually listening. He's engaging. He's not trying to like change the topic to like get his thing in. Like he's fully engaged with what I'm saying. And that I think is part of like my love language. I love feeling heard and appreciated, and Ben shows that so well. And yeah, so that's one of the things I love about Ben. You go. You can do one.
Yeah, her eyes
and
are
we'll
pretty,
go back and forth.
Her eyes are pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She got brown hair.
Thank you.
No, of course it's her tenderness and her just genuine love for others. And she is, in my experience, the first to usually just serve. If she's in a group or a crowd of people, she's usually just very much the first to serve people. And so that just servitude that she lives out has just always been very attractive to me. And I would just say this, the way that she lays herself down, it shows humility, and that's something that I also really prioritize in myself, and also just what we're called to as humans or as Christians. And she just lives that out very well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You do too.
Thank you.
All right, so next question is, Ben, how did you propose?
Oh, yeah. So my plan was to come back here because since it was our first date. I had a whole plan. So I asked for permission from Mr. Fetzer first, got the ring. And my plan was to, which is
Wait,
what
how many
happened.
days before you proposed did you get the ring?
Oh, I think it was a month in advance.
Oh, wow.
Wait, when did it come in though? Wasn't it like 2 days before or
Oh,
something?
you're right. Yeah, you're right. No, I'm wrong. Yeah.
Most guys can't hold on to it for a month.
Yeah, no, I was planning. I had my first consultation about the ring like
Yeah.
a month in advance, but it was actually like Friday, and we got engaged on Sunday.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's right.
I was like
Yeah.
a month and a half.
No, I'm just got the diamond probably a month and a half in
Okay.
advance, and then
Okay.
actually got everything figured out.
Yeah.
Because we had Becca's wedding too, and
His sister.
yeah, my sister got married on January 13th, and we got engaged on January 29th. So that was our year anniversary, and that's kind of I always
Yeah.
thought that's when I would propose.
Yeah.
Um,
But you were
and-
sneaky with it because since it was our 1 year anniversary, I didn't know it was up. I just thought it was like a special date.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it
Smart.
was my excuse to do special things and not get in trouble for it, or
Although-
not have you think that it was.
Yeah.
why I was gonna
Yeah.
actually propose.
Although I had a sneaking suspicion because I remember we were sitting in church because it was a Sunday and I like glanced over and his hands were shaking and I was like, what the heck? Ben doesn't, get nervous. Why
I
is he
still don't recall
nervous? No, you weren't shaking. You were fidgeting. That's what you're doing, which you don't do that either. Like you're messing with your hands. And I remember thinking, huh, but I also still, it was unexpected even so, but sorry,
Yeah.
continue.
No, so I decided I was gonna do it that Sunday on our 1 year anniversary. There was a restaurant that we had been talking about going to for a really long time, and so I just booked reservations.
Pep and Dolores.
Yeah, Pep and Dolores,
Italian, downtown.
Yeah.
Really nice. Really,
Really
good.
good.
Recommend.
tasty noodles.
Keep that, write that
Tasty
down.
Yeah, write that
noodles.
down. I was listening. Just Pep and
Get the
Dolores.
lemon noodles. They're really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we went there, and it's a really cute restaurant. We went there, and afterwards, I took her to, it was the Cincinnati Library because it was too far to go to this one because the last place I want to go was the Bellevue Lookout.
Oh, okay.
So the Cincinnati Library, since the library was the first place where we had our first date, one thing that's been really prominent throughout our relationship is writing letters to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So
that
what
has
I-
come up multiple times.
Really?
Yeah.
In just other podcasts
Yes.
or episodes?
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Letters are a really good way to communicate
Mhm.
because you just have a lot of time to write out your thoughts rather than you're just speaking them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was really sweet. that
I
we did
remember
that.
you wrote me a letter the first day we were dating. You like put it on my car windshield while I was at work. So I got out of work and I had my first letter.
Before the library?
No, after
Oh, then
like the
after
first
we
day we were officially dating.
Oh,
so
gotcha,
after the
gotcha.
library.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, started that right away.
Yeah, so we kind of started that trend right away.
Mm-hmm.
So what we did at the library is I had us both go into separate locations and we write letters. We wrote a letter to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Which didn't tip me off because we did that already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which little did she know, I had 2 letters, and my second letter just wrote, "Will you marry me?"
Ooh.
And so, but then after that, after the library, we went to the Bellevue Lookout, which is kind of where we had our first dance there, because that was our last location we went to, or on our first Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So we went to the Bellevue Lookout, and it just is an overlook over Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's super pretty.
Yeah, and so I had my brother and his girlfriend and my other friend who was taking pictures. I had them set up a nice little location. It had like a lantern on it.
Yeah, you had like a lot of stuff set up because
Yeah,
it was
some-
like
yeah.
it was like decor from Becca's wedding. So it was like little candles and little like foliage things.
Yeah.
It was pretty cute. It was a good
It's
setup.
funny because we were walking towards it and you noticed it and you were like, "Oh, what's this here for? Was this you?" And I was like, I don't know what this is. This is weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I was
This
kind
is
of
nice.
like either this is for me or it's gonna be embarrassing if I ask if this is for me.
Yeah, it's
And I'm
all
just
planned.
assuming.
Yeah. Yeah, so then after that, we read our letters to each other, and then she opened up the last letter, and I proposed.
Yeah, well, and at that point, I knew because our friend came out and was like taking photos. Right, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that was the giveaway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of how it all went down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I found out later that because we had a conversation after we talked about marriage and and what we envisioned for ourselves in the future.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about when we wanted to get engaged, and I found out later that it just escaped my mind, but I guess we were going to plan to get engaged in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So when we had that conversation in May, we were like, okay, ideal timeline. And I think it was like get married next early summer, which would have been, I guess, like maybe 2 months ago from now. And so it was like, okay, so in order to do that, we should get engaged by the fall. So in my mind, I had almost been expecting an engagement anywhere between like October and December. Yeah. And so when that didn't happen, I didn't say anything, but I was like, huh.
Yeah. Which was, for some reason, I must have just heard get engaged in January. Like that, like the winter.
Fall.
I guess the winter.
January.
So the whole time I wasn't like trying to be late, but I misread it.
I mean, it was fine. I wasn't doubting anything. I was like, you know what? He's not ready. That's fine. We'll keep waiting. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how have you spent this time of engagement?
Yeah. Lots of intentionality, lots of time just planning what our future looks like.
Yeah.
And also just wedding planning.
Yeah.
Lots of wedding planning.
I've heard that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
It is.
I wish it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I think, like what you said, intentionality, I think because we've been intentional to like always like to continue doing our Bible study together, to like not forsake that for the sake of busyness, to continue having conversations and like, I think just keeping that intentional space of we're still pursuing each other. We're still like, figuring out like, how do we want to live as a married couple, as a family now?
Yeah, what we envision for that to look like, which we've talked about, but now we're going to be putting that into place.
Yeah.
We're going to actually be living it out.
Yeah.
I think one other thing is, since it's just kind of a stressful time, it has been really intentional about, I guess, relieving that stress. And so she's been understanding how I take in stress and how I deal with it, and I've really been understanding how she deals with it and planning just a wedding, a big event, which is what will happen a lot in life, is just planning a big event.
Being stressed and being busy. So it's kind of, it's a good practice run.
Yeah.
As you guys grew closer, you started getting more involved with each other's families. How involved have you guys as parents been in your relationship?
Ooh.
That's a really good question.
That is a good question.
I'll speak for on my half.
Okay.
Both my parents are really good at being counselors, just speaking into the relationship and not speaking at the relationship.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of just, my dad's been with me, just helping me understand and guiding me. But I wouldn't say that they're very controlling. Like, they don't really have any control in the relationship, which is really good. Yeah, but they're good at speaking into it. And they're also very observant. I would say my mom is very observant in the sense that she just always sees a relationship and how it's lived out, and she's able to, I guess, pinpoint just things that she would like to see or things that she would encourage us on. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I haven't lived at home for about 3 years now. And so, like, I'm 25 at this point. Like, I've kind of been on my own for a while out of my parents' home. So I don't really so much, like I do seek, like, their wisdom and counsel, but not in the sense of, like, I ask, like, permission necessarily to do things. So... But like I said before, early on, like before Ben and I started dating, I did want their perspective on like, what do you see in Ben? Like, do you think this is a good idea? And like they loved Ben. So and I kind of knew that before, because it's like our families knew each other. He'd been friends with my brother, and actually my brother was someone I talked to also because he was good friends with Ben. and kind of just like, you know, like, this is your chance, like, to say anything. And after that, it's like, okay, like, we're going to be dating. And I think I kind of more so just have this expectation, like, if, like, I value my parents' like opinion and their perspective, especially as Christians. And so, like, I trust them that if there is anything, that they're going to bring it up. And if there isn't, then we're good. Like, there's never been issues, you know, never been red flags or anything like, hey, Ben did this or anything like that. So I feel like it's like, I don't know, there hasn't been.
Yeah. Which an interesting thing about that is I think actually the contrast between our relationship and our past relationships had a big effect on our parents' envisionment of our current our relationship, is because they see the differences in how Avery communicates with my parents and how I communicate with Avery's parents.
Or even how, like, my parents communicated with me when I was in my previous relationship. Like, they said a lot more because there's a lot more issues. So to me, I was like, I trust you to say something if, you know, if there's an issue. Yeah. So
how involved have other parties been, like pastors or mentors? Are you doing like premarital counseling or anything like that?
We're doing 2.
2? Wow.
We really need that
help. It's been busy. Okay. My brother-in-law is officiating our wedding. And so we are doing counseling through him. We've been going through a book. And then we also wanted to go through Pastor Foster just because it's like, this is our church. This is our pastor. We want to go through church also.
And it's in person.
Yes.
Which is nice to have an actual relationship, like an in-person relationship with our pastor and his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Which we have two more sessions to go through with them, and it's closing in.
I don't know if we're squeezing those in at this point.
Oh yeah, 2 weeks, 19 days.
Yeah. It might be happening later. That might be post marriage. We'll see.
All right. How was physical intimacy handled during your relationship?
Yeah. Or you can go ahead, sorry.
No worries. So one of the first conversations we had before we were dating, and this was also something that we prayed about in that kind of period, that week period before we started dating and when we knew that we wanted to date each other, was boundaries. And boundaries are huge. When there's something that you feel like you both want to extend a boundary to, or say like, hey, this is something that tempts me, you pull back that boundary. And so that's been really big, is just like understanding how we're tempted, because even if you're not crossing a boundary, still sometimes your mind is just going a place, and you have to cut out, if your right arm causes you to sin, you cut it off. And so it's just kind of applying that wisdom, that biblical wisdom, to a relationship.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, I remember like when we had that first conversation very early on about boundaries, I remember like stating like specific things, because I was like, I don't want there to be any confusion of what it means that we are going to be pursuing purity, because people have different ideas of that. And so I remember just like saying things and almost kind of feeling bad, like I'm not expecting you to do this, but like I want to say it because like this is not okay.
It's important.
But no, I agree with what you're saying, because like, it's like we could do one thing one week, because like Ben and I, we haven't waited till marriage to kiss, but it's like, so we don't view kissing as a sin, but it's like that could definitely become a sin if it's done with the wrong mindset or the wrong, like if there's lust involved or the wrong motivations. So it's like, it's like that thing is okay, but if it isn't becoming okay, then we pull the boundary back. And I think that's something we've been learning, is how to be honest with each other, and I think honest with ourselves with what we're struggling with, because I think there's definitely like an emotional intimacy that is created when you are like holding hands, hugging, kissing, and so like you don't want to give that up, like you don't want to admit that there's an issue. But I think just like we've been very, I think, open pretty early on about where we're at, and I think just maintaining that, and like also being willing to call each other out, like we've both called each other out, and just like checking, seeing like how are you, and kind of like reevaluating like where we're at, and like are we pursuing God, are we honoring God right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really key point, because Satan is so tactical in the way that he knows what our weaknesses are before we even do.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gets himself into those little holes, and he wiggles himself in, and he tries to create space. And so that communication really closes in that space, and it cuts out those holes. And just even saying, like you were saying, just being really confirming, just being over vocalizing our boundaries, just saying every little thing, but it cuts out that hole of when you're in that situation. It's like sometimes your mind is like, okay, we didn't clarify this, so this is okay. And so it's just like because Satan is just trying to okay things, trying to confirm that it's fine, but just being really over vocalizing it and communicating your boundaries is key to trying to cut out those Satan's ends.
Yeah.
So the next question is, in hindsight, what are some ways you would have handled your time before marriage differently? And now I know you guys are within this. So any ways that you would have
in 3 weeks.
You would have handled that time, like the very early stages of the relationship, differently, like the very beginning? Or do you feel like that was like the best way that
I don't have any regrets.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I could have said something about
Your intentions
my intentions early on, just to clear the air, but I also think that that was the way God intended.
Actually, the one thing I would change is going to bed never before 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Because it'd either be up texting, or we would be like even like out with like your brother, just out late, because it's like I just don't want to stop hanging out with you, and it's like I literally have to wake up at 7 and go to work.
So
don't give in to the excitement of a new relationship.
Your sleep is valuable.
Your sleep is valuable.
I think I changed that. Which honestly, it just was not sustainable, and I feel like a month in, it quickly adjusted to like, all right, it's 10 o'clock. I'm not replying to your text.
And it ended up us just spending our lunch breaks napping.
I was so tired. I'd literally sleep at work on my lunch break. But
really.
So you could say our priorities. Some of those priorities we're adjusting to.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. So as we kind of wrap up, stepping away from you guys' relationship, so what are some things that you've seen in just like the dating world these days, and kind of the state of things? I'll kind of keep that open. And
okay.
You want to start us off on this one?
Yeah, I guess I see a lot of just casual attitude towards dating, and like I would say I definitely was guilty of that also, my previous relationship. But I feel like I want to maybe speak more into what I see in like Christian dating.
Yeah.
Because obviously like the world is fallen. There's a lot of people who just don't have the same morals and like things that they're living their life by. So of course they're going to come to different conclusions. I think what I've noticed, and actually what makes me sad, is I see a lot of that leaking into the Christian world, almost like a justification of like, maybe because you see so many people having relationships that are casual, or having relationships that are honoring to the Lord, that they're not motivated in marriage, not waiting for marriage, whatever it is. I think I see that, and then it's coupled with I'm a Christian. And I think that makes me really sad, because it's like, one, there's a part of it that I think gives a wrong reputation for Christianity.
Yeah.
But it's also sad because I see that person knows some truth, but they're either for some reason not, like their heart is hardened to like obeying it and applying it, or they don't understand it, or whatever is going on. And I think that makes me sad, because I think that other people see that and not understand like what like the beauty in a truly like God committed relationship, and how it is so different, and how it is good that it is so different from the world.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way of saying that. The contrast between a Christian relationship and a non-Christian relationship is so stark. I don't understand. I mean, it's so obvious how you can just looking at a secular relationship, you see a difference, a huge difference. It's the reason why there are so many divorces. Why I think it's way over 50%, I think. I don't know what the exact percentage is, but the percentage of marriages getting divorced is probably in the upper 70s is my guess. But especially as time goes on and the secular culture's values are just changing.
Yeah.
But the stark difference of just a Christian relationship, when you have your values and you're oriented towards Christ, and not only your own desires, but what God desires in you and in your life, it's just a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too, like, it just reminded me of something that happened to me a while ago. I remember I was with some non-Christian friends, and I was like telling them about my relationship with Ben, and I remember they asked me, they're like, "Oh, are you guys sleeping together?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah, like that's just a casual thing to ask.
And also, like, they know I'm a Christian, but there wasn't like an understanding that if you're a Christian, you don't do that. So it's like their understanding of Christianity was already like not accurate, because I don't know, maybe they knew Christians, that to them that wasn't a standard, that, you know, we're pursuing purity and like marriage. And so I just remember like that was really interesting to me, that like me being a Christian to them, to the outside world, didn't really mean that much. And that that made me sad.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's so important to be vocal. There's like the quote, and I hate this quote, that's like, what is it? It's like, live as a Christian, or like use words when, or live the gospel, but use words when necessary, as if like everything we do can just be seen in our lives. And it's like, there's so much confusion and misinterpretation I think can come from that. And it's like, we're supposed to like preach the gospel, say it outward, but also like, I think, talk about our lives as Christians, explain our motivations, why we're doing, like the fact that we are like, as Christians, pursuing marriage and waiting till marriage and honoring the Lord first. Like, I think talk about that, not just assume people know, because I think that's part of like sharing the gospel, is sharing how we're living for Christ verbally and what God is doing in our lives.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, yeah, like in the Christian environment specifically, you guys have seen what, people just treating relationships very casually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, casual is such a word to use, because there's no, I would say, future motivation, forward motivation. Yeah. It's very...
Or even Christ focused.
Yeah. Well, I think being Christ focused usually is very forward motivating, because
that's true.
You're always trying to build your life to be more Christ focused. And Christ just gives purpose for our lives, and our purpose for our lives is also very forward motivated. But like when you don't have that forward motivation, it's just very pleasure seeking. Yeah. It's just very momentary.
Very self-focused.
Yep.
What do you guys think needs to change to correct that?
I don't know. Honestly, I think it's such a inward change that has to happen. Like, I don't think rules make people break rules all the time. I think, because like I know for myself, like my motivation changing to like want to like date with the purpose of marriage was like God changed my heart towards that. So I feel like it's almost just like praying that the Lord works in people's hearts, the Lord grows them in maturity and understanding.
Yeah. I think, just understanding God's law alone is a compass for our hearts and the way that we are to live. And that just will set the path for how you envision dating yourself. So, I mean, God is always the solution.
So it's not that we need to institute courtship.
Right, yeah. It's tough to move that on a political level, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't have the government making boundaries in a relationship. Yeah. So it really just starts with the person. It's micro rather than macro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
All right, last two questions. First one is for you, Ben, and then we'll finish with Avery.
All right.
So the first question is, what advice do you have for single men?
Oh, for single men, Single Christian men.
Yes, Christian men, yeah.
Yeah, I would say don't take yourself too seriously. In the sense, just, I don't know, sometimes I just see it in Christian relationships where I think initially Christian men sometimes can just take themselves too seriously to a point where I think sometimes it can be unattractive when a man is very like forward in the sense where he doesn't become relational, is what I mean. Is if you want to just take yourself, be able to laugh at yourself and make yourself a lot more relational. And sometimes if you get a bunch of Christian men in a room, sometimes there's a battle to be the most philosophical,
yeah.
the most theologically sound. And sometimes I just notice that. And I think that it's okay to not be. And that's just my advice in Christian dating, is just don't take yourself too seriously, because it is God who lives through us and not us who lives out God's plan, or who lives out God.
Yeah.
Right. So that would just be, yeah.
Actually, do you want to add anything to that? You being,
being
in the
on the receiving
scene.
end of
I
that.
was wondering where you were going with that, but I agree with where you ended up.
I was working on my thoughts.
Okay.
I didn't have that one planned ahead of time.
Do you think that you see that because there's like an expectation that like Christian men have, especially like as leaders in like the role of a husband and a father, like there's a lot of expectations and there's a lot of like responsibility. Do you feel like that maybe there's like that pressure that like...
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is a given. Those things are given. But if you expect yourself to be immediately good at those and already have those things nailed down, and then you're also trying to reflect that and represent yourself as those things, then it can come off as almost like cold.
Oh, okay.
But I mean in the sense of God is always training you. And part of that is just that you're going to live those things out, and God is going to prepare your heart for those.
Yeah.
But it is okay to not be prepared for those things when you're getting into dating. That's what I think dating is there for, is for God to take an individual and grow them in unity with another, so that one day they will be in the covenant with Christ as one flesh. And so it's just, that I would say that just don't take yourself too seriously, and humble yourself before the Lord before assuming you have those things figured out. It just makes yourself more relational, more able to connect. I don't know. Would you agree with that? What do you think, Tim, as well on that?
Yeah. Well, I want to hear Avery's perspective on this, but it seems like for a lot of guys, what I've heard from women is that they can't find any mature men.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, let's mature. And then you get all these guys that are like over serious.
Yeah.
So there's like almost like a middle ground
but he's
there.
not fun.
Yeah.
I think maybe too what I'm seeing is like if I were to encounter someone like that, they wouldn't be approachable. So there needs to be an element that like shows that like, oh, you're a kind and funny and normal person, and you're also like, not that it's not normal, but like, you're not just always thinking and talking about theology, but that you are also down to earth.
Approachable is a good word there.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what you said as well, is a good way to put that.
Yeah.
All right. We want to shift to advice to single Christian women.
Yeah.
What do you have for us?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I honestly have not spent a lot of my time like after college, like out of my parents' house, single. So I don't know if I have like the best perspective, because like the time between me from my first relationship to Ben was maybe only like, well, actually maybe it was like 9 months, but we were talking for a while before that. I think maybe something I would say is that to commit the relationships that you do have to the Lord, to not be trying to make something because you want it, but to choose and trust that the Lord will provide what you need. So to be content with what he's giving you right now. I think also something, because I would definitely say that like I'm a romantic, and I definitely had like expectations and like things that I just imagined like my perfect like fantasy relationship would start off as. Not that I would change anything with you, Ben. That's not what I'm saying.
And you're setting up for it.
But there is kind of
Something here.
an idea that like the perfect man is going to sweep you off your feet, and he's going to pursue you, and it's going to be this like this fairy tale romance. And I think the reality is that like it doesn't always start that way. Like I did not really like get to know Ben like even early on with the expectation that we were going to be dating or married. And like I wasn't even like that summer looking to date anybody. But it was like the Lord very clearly placed Ben in my life, and he is a good father, and he gives good gifts, and like that is a hope that we can rely on. And I think just choosing contentment, that if he hasn't given this to us right now, that is a good thing, and that there's a reason, and that we can find joy and contentment in the Lord, of like regardless of what we want. But I also think that like if the Lord has placed that desire in your heart, I really feel like there's a reason for that. And that's where it's like, okay, then we just trust the Lord that his timing and his person and the way that happens is like his good gift in his timing, in his way. And it might not be what you expect.